Heungbu and Nolbu, a Korean story. Once, there were two brothers, Nolbu and Heungbu, who lived together with their families in their father's house. Nolbu, the eldest, was selfish and cruel, but his brother Heungbu was always kind. When their father died, Nolbu threw Heungbu out of the house and kept all their father's fortune for himself. Heungbu had to live in a tumble-down hovel and work hard to feed his family, but he never complained. One autumn, the harvest was bad and Heungbu's family had nothing to eat, so he went to his brother's house to beg for some food for his children. Nolbu's wife, who was just as cruel as her husband, was cooking in the kitchen. When she saw Heungbu, she refused to give him anything and struck him on the face with her rice ladle. But Heungbu didn't complain. Carefully, he scraped the sticky rice from his cheek and asked her to strike him again. Thinking him stupid, she did as he asked. Then Heungbu gathered the rice from the other cheek and took it home to feed his children. The next day, Heungbu found a yellow swallow that had fallen from its nest, and gently he bandaged its broken leg, then cared for it until it was strong enough to return to the nest. That winter, the swallow flew away, but it didn't forget Heungbu's kindness. When it returned in the spring, the swallow dropped some seeds into his hand, and Heungbu had no garden, so he planted them on his thatched roof. Before long, the vines began to grow on the roof. They produced bright flowers and then 3 plump gourds. When the gourds were ripe, Heungbu borrowed a ladder and picked them. "These will feed us all for weeks," he said, and cut one open. And to the family's surprise, the gourd was full of rice, which flowed and flowed until it filled a dozen sacks. "Open another," said his wife, and out of the second gourd tumbled enough gold to fill a quart. "Open another," cried the children, and out of the third gourd, Heungbu pulled enough timber and nails to build a fine house. Laughing with happiness, Heungbu and his family set to work and built themselves a house, and when it was built, they shared their good fortunes with their neighbors. The story of Heungbu's good luck soon reached his brother's ears. Nolbu went at once to see how such a thing could have happened, and he listened in amazement as Heungbu told him about the swallow and the gourd seeds. Immediately, Nolbu was jealous of his brother's good fortune. He returned home and searched for a swallow's nest. When he found one, he snatched up a young bird and broke its leg, and then he bandaged it roughly and flung it back in the nest. As before, the swallow flew south for the winter. When it returned in the spring, the swallow dropped some seeds into Nolbu's hand, and he planted them in his garden. Nolbu and his wife waited impatiently for their gourds to grow, and as soon as they were ripe, Nolbu fetched his saw to cut them open. "Now we will be even richer," they cried greedily. But to their horror, out of the gourds leaped a dozen wicked goblins, shrieking wildly. The goblins stole Nolbu's money and tore down his house. Nolbu and his wife were left with nothing, and in tears they went to Heungbu and humbly asked for help. Heungbu welcomed them. "My house is your house, brother," he said. And so Nolbu and his wife learned kindness, and they all lived happily ever after.